Good morning, and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship for Franklin and the mountains of Western North Carolina and North Georgia. Our welcome words this morning are from the Reverend Sue Browning. We come together as people of faith. Whether you are active in a specific tradition or not, faith is about naming what it is you trust and lean into in times of pain. Being together is a visible and profound claim that we have faith in one another, that we have trust in this loving community. My name is Mary Teslow, and I'm pleased to join Selma Sparks as your service leaders today. This morning, we're joined by our Zoom stage manager, Annette Watlington, and music coordinator, Jude Lowry. I want to give an extra thanks to both of them since we have extra media today. The Zoom chat box is available for announcements for those who prefer to follow the service and focus on that. You can open it later and check up. Our church-related announcements. This afternoon, there's an environmental injustice online program for 4 to 5:30 that's described in the UU View. Also, tomorrow, Monday, we have the Sunday sequel, and Selma will be joining us to chat more about the topics in today's service. And on Tuesday, we have a ladies' lunch at noon, hosted by Laura Lovelace. Laura, did you want to say something more about that? You have to unmute.
It would be good if they could tell me if they're going to come. Give me a call or an email.
Wonderful, thank you. Are there any other announcements? Thank you all. Our fellowship is a light for liberal religion in the mountains that values diversity and the richness it brings to our community. Our celebration of diversity is reflected in the variety of our Sunday services. We hope today's service, which celebrates Black History Month, enriches your journey. As an introduction to our service, tomorrow is the 57th anniversary of the assassination of Malcolm X. Today, we celebrate Malcolm as a revolutionary optimist. We are grateful to Reverend Joseph Boyd for the use of portions of his sermon, The Legacy of Malcolm X. In appreciation, we have donated to his pastor's fund at the UU Church of Youngstown, Ohio. We have the special opportunity today to hear Selma's remembrances of Malcolm. Selma was a well-respected journalist in Harlem in the 1950s and 60s and was the only woman Malcolm trusted to interview him. Our service will be divided into 2 sections with a pause for the offertory. And now Selma with the opening words.
Hello, good morning, everyone. This is from the Malcolm X autobiography. I have often reflected upon the new vistas that reading has opened to me. I knew right there in prison that reading had changed forever the course of my life. As I see it today, the ability to read awoke inside me some long dormant craving to be mentally alive. Malcolm's autobiography, published in 1965, is based on a series of interviews with Alex Haley about his life. It discusses how Malcolm evolved from being incarcerated to becoming a major figure in the civil rights movement. The book was banned almost immediately during the Black Panther and civil rights movements, and is still widely banned in 2022 in prisons and school districts.
Thank you, Selma. Our chalice lighting. We light this chalice in memory of the courage of those who have struggled for freedom, the persistence of those who've struggled for justice, and the love of those who've built beloved communities to carry on the light of hope. We have a special treat for our opening music, a melody of spirituals.
All the love that's in my heart, remove all the bonds that keep us apart. I wish you knew what it would mean to be free, so you'd see that every man should be free. You'd see and agree that every man should be free. Then you'd say it loud, say it clear, for the whole round world to hear. You'd say it loud, say it clear, for the whole round world to hear.
Thank you, Jude. We begin with a brief video biography of Malcolm X, followed by Selma's reflection. And just a comment, the picture that Annette has in her block is from a painting of Malcolm that's behind Selma.
Malcolm X is an extraordinary figure for whom African Americans have this deep affinity.
Malcolm X is one of the most historic and most significant human beings in American history.
Malcolm Little was born May 19, 1925 in Omaha, Nebraska. His father, Earl Little, was an outspoken Baptist minister and supporter of Marcus Garvey's Back to Africa movement. His push for civil rights made him the target of death threats, forcing the family to move several times. In 1929, their home in Michigan was burned to the ground, and 2 years later, Earl was found dead. This was a devastating blow for Malcolm's mother, who was eventually committed to a mental institution. Her 8 children were sent to orphanages and foster homes. In school, Malcolm was a smart and focused student until he told his teacher in high school he wanted to become a lawyer.
He wanted to be a lawyer, but they told him that they said niggers don't get to be lawyers, so that's an unreasonable goal for a nigger. And so, to some extent, America created Malcolm X. So those are the forces that made him into the person that he eventually became.
He dropped out and moved to Boston. Over the next few years, he held various jobs and moved from Boston to Flint, Michigan, to Harlem in New York, and finally back to Boston. During this period, he started his street career as a pimp, drug dealer, and gambler. In 1946, he was arrested for burglary and sent to prison. In prison, he began reading everything he could get a hold of. Inspired by his brother Reginald's conversion to Islam, Malcolm read the teachings of Elijah Muhammad and the Nation of Islam. Malcolm dropped his slave name Little and chose X to represent his lost tribal name. By the time he was paroled in 1952, he had committed himself to the Nation of Islam. He was a very charismatic and powerful speaker who conveyed Elijah Muhammad's teaching to the masses. He was appointed national spokesman. During this time, membership increased from 500 to 30,000.
Malcolm emerged as this extraordinarily talented itinerant minister, and he preached a creed of black superiority, that blacks controlled themselves.
In 1958, Malcolm X married Betty X in Lansing, Michigan. The couple had 6 daughters, including twins Malak and Malika, born in 1965 after their father's death and named for him. Malcolm X rejected the civil rights movement's use of nonviolent protest. Instead, he encouraged black men to use any means necessary to protect themselves.
That Malcolm's clarion call for blacks to mobilize and fight against racism inspired millions of African Americans, even those who disagreed with him. They respected him as a person, as a man.
Malcolm's faith was challenged when he found out that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad had seduced several women in the Nation of Islam, and some had bore his children. In 1964, Malcolm X renounced Elijah Muhammad and left the Nation of Islam. He founded a religious organization, the Muslim Mosque Incorporated, and took a pilgrimage to the Holy Land of Mecca, Saudi Arabia. In Mecca, he met people of all races he could call his brothers. He renamed himself El Hajj Malik al-Shabazz and returned to the U.S. with new hope for the future. He founded the Organization of Afro-American Unity to unite blacks all over the world. Malcolm was seen as a threat to the Nation of Islam, and he was informed that members were plotting to assassinate him. His home was firebombed, but he and his family were unharmed. On February 21, 1965, Malcolm started a presentation at the Audubon Ballroom in New York when 3 gunmen ran up and shot him 15 times at close range. He was pronounced dead on arrival at the hospital. In his 39 years, Malcolm was constantly reinventing himself. At the end of his life, he was speaking to all races, not about civil rights, but human rights.
Malcolm's image of an uncompromising rebel who challenged and fought against racial injustice, and he was prepared to die for his beliefs.
He is a person that inspired millions of African Americans to figure out their self-worth to elevate their self-esteem. He led people to command and demand more from the great country in which they live.
Selma, we're looking forward to your reflection.
Yes, part of this is from the book. It became clear in a very short time that, oh, am I unmuted?
Yes.
Yeah. It became clear in a very short time that Malcolm was incredibly intelligent and a great orator. He knew how to work a crowd, and what made his speeches unique is that he spoke completely to Black people as human beings without concerning himself without having to appease a white audience. In one of my favorite exchanges in an interview with Malcolm X, the interviewer asked him if he seeks to be equal with white people in this country. And I love his answer to that question. Malcolm responds, "White people are not the yardstick of equality. So no, I don't want to be equal with them. Equality means I have the power to live my life to its potential in every way." I think in this culture, regardless of race, we have yet to fully discover this alternative yardstick that is not based on whiteness, not based on capitalism, not based on male or straight sexual preference. Even if we don't completely fit this model, I think too much of our energy and aspiration is spent trying to find success according to a yardstick that is damaging to us. There is an alternative self-love, self-respect, and then seeing what comes out of that new awareness. Now, when I interviewed Malcolm, I'd never done an interview. I wrote articles, I did things like that, I spoke, but I'd never done an interview. And my publisher, who was my boss, told me, well, Malcolm has said that he would give us an interview if you did it, if Selma Sparks does the interview. And I asked him, what does he know about Selma Sparks? What does he know about me? Why should I be turned to do this interview that I've never done? And he told me, well, look, we can't force you to do it, but if you don't, we don't get the interview. So you decide what you're going to do. And of course, I knew what this meant. If you don't do it, you're finished anyway. So I arranged the appointment, and we met in this restaurant in Harlem. And I was immediately, this was shortly after Malcolm had returned from Mecca, and he was very different from the man that I'd watched for years. And we sat down, and I forgot to turn on the tape recorder as he spoke. Just listening to him was so wonderful. Listening to this man speak and speak the things that he knew and the things he believed. And I just sat there, absolutely enthralled. I was speechless. I didn't say very much. I asked him a few questions, you know, because I had to do that. That was an interview. But this was the most magnificent moment in my life. I've interviewed a number of people, very famous people, but this was the most wonderful moment, to sit and listen to this man speak the things that he spoke, things that I believed in. And I think this is how I developed my passion for all of it. It was from Malcolm. And when I saw the writing, I realized, oh my goodness, this is the worst thing I've ever done. And we, of course, at that time, you had to submit whatever you were writing to the person who was being written about. And he approved it. Because I thought, well, maybe he won't, and then we'll do it again, or I'll get a chance, another second chance. No, he approved it, so it was printed. But this was a man who was reaching the young people. He was reaching the Black youth in Harlem, the Black males who had so much trouble. And he was reaching them, and he was teaching them to believe in themselves and to know who they were. And this was so important. The movement, the need for that was so great. And he recognized it, and this is what he was doing. And when Malcolm was assassinated. That night, I was supposed to have been at the Audubon, but I couldn't get there. And when I heard this, of course, I went into tears, which I still do. But I was asked to write an article of farewell, and I wrote the farewell. While Lakem, Salam, my brother, Malcolm spoke to the people, for the people. And this is what made him the great man that he was, the great man he will always be known to be. That's because I'm
Thank
getting into tears.
Thank you, Selma. Thank you for sharing that. Our offertory this morning is a Negro spiritual, which is the preferred term. The worship bench recently read an article about a church in Massachusetts paying quote unquote royalties when they use Negro spirituals in their services. Our committee is choosing to do the same for the songs we've used this year as we explore where to make our donation. Your gifts of time, talent, and treasure are deeply appreciated and spent responsibly. Now our offertory song, This Little Light of Mine.
This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. There's a little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. There's a little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Yes, there's a little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine, shine. There's a little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. May we know that together. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Everywhere I go, everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine, shine. Oh, everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine.
All in my room, I'm
Gonna let it shine.
all in my room.
I'm gonna let it shine.
All in my room.
I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine.
This little light of mine,
I'm gonna let it shine.
this little light of mine,
I'm gonna let it shine.
this little light of mine.
I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. This little light, this little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light, this light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine, shine, shine. I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it Let it.
Mary, you're muted.
Thank you. Many of you may know Odetta as a folk singer. What you may not know is that she was a classically trained contralto. In later years, Odetta would put her classical training into perspective, noting that, quote, I had swallowed this whole pill that society gave us, that if it was classical and from Europe, it was legitimate. You know, they told me in grammar school, as we were reading about slavery, that the slaves were happy and singing all the time. That was at a time when I felt, I think we all go through this, it couldn't be in the book if it weren't true. And I believed I swallowed that thing and it damaged me. I still have scars from that. Eventually, she leaned into Black folkways as a way to sing the rage, trauma, love, and resiliency at the heart of the songs that Black folks created and clung to in order to survive. This Little Light of Mine is so much more than a sweet, light, happy song. It is a song that reminds us to show up. Despite the pain and fear and anger, we have to let our light shine, a light of freedom and justice, equality and openness, courage and compassion, peace, love, and hope. We dedicate our gifts. Gifts given in love and hope continue a cycle of love and hope. And now our second video of Malcolm X.
Don't scare Negroes today with no badge or no white skin or no white sheet or no white anything else. The police the same way. They put their club upside your head and then turn around and accuse you of attacking them. Every case of police brutality against a Negro follows the same pattern. They attack you, bust you all upside your mouth, and then take you to court and charge you with assault. What kind of democracy is that? What kind of freedom is that? What kind of social or political system is it when a black man has no voice in court, has nothing on his side other than what the white man chooses to give him? My brothers and sisters, we have to put a stop to this, and it will never be stopped until we stop it ourselves. They attack the victim, and then the criminal who attacked the victim accuses the victim of attacking him. Yes, sir. This is American justice. Yes, sir. That's right. This is American democracy. Yes, and those of you who are familiar with it know that in America, democracy is hypocrisy. Right. Now, if I'm wrong, put me in jail. But if you can't prove that a democracy is not hypocrisy, then don't put your hands on me.
Malcolm was speaking in 1960. It could have been today. Now, Selma, please.
Yes, this is the commentary. This is from the Reverend. One thing that I think is greatly misunderstood about Malcolm is what he meant by white. Even today, many falsely believe, based on poorly written history books, that Malcolm hated white people. This is not true. Malcolm hated whiteness and what that term white has come to mean in the United States. In this country, white means entitlement and oppression of other people. That's what the term white has come to mean in this country, as it is written in our laws and institutions. When you have a document, the Constitution, that says that white men are property owners who have the right to pursue happiness, and then in that same document, you say black people are 3/5 of a person, you are no longer simply talking about different hues of color. Malcolm didn't hate anyone based on the color of their skin. He hated whiteness. which in this country has come to mean entitlement, the right to benefit at the expense of others. When anyone sees this important shift, they can begin to get a fuller picture of Malcolm X, someone who fiercely loved Black people and taught them to love themselves in the face of violence and exploitation. Malcolm X's legacy is huge, and I don't think can be adequately quantified. The Black Lives Matter movement is a direct legacy of Malcolm X, a secular, non-religious commitment to loving Black people and honoring life. But I think his legacy goes much further than that. There are two parts that stand out to me. And with this, Reverend Joseph Boyd says, one is the commitment to an alternative source of pride and vision, rather than trying to find validation in a system that continually oppresses you and keeps you down. Second, I think Malcolm X was way ahead of his time in realizing that the problem is not civil rights, but human rights, and that this requires a global response if we are to see real change. We are witnessing this during this last year, an increasing awareness of a needed global response beyond our borders as the United States. We see Black and brown people continue to suffer in this country and across the globe. Paying attention to these situations very closely with a desire to alleviate suffering is part of the legacy of Malcolm X. Hating what is oppressive and violent toward people who are born into a certain ethnicity or skin tone is part of the legacy of Malcolm X. Hating what is exploited is not hate, that is love. Loving who you are, loving where you live, loving all that brought you to this moment. That is part of the legacy of Malcolm X. Reaching across boundaries to different religions, different nations, different languages to encourage human rights and dignity. It sounds like Unitarian Universalism should be honoring Malcolm X. Finding a new yardstick to base your self-worth, a yardstick based on respect and love for who you actually are. I know no greater teaching.
Selma, thank you so very much for those reflections. We have
Yes,
time
ma'am.
for a couple of questions now, and then of course more later during conversation time and on tomorrow evening at 7. Are there any questions or comments right now? Paul?
Selma, you may be aware of the situation in the Congo and how, in a sense, we're complicit by just using our computers and cell phones and other devices because of the mineral wealth in Congo and the resulting violence against, the population there. You have any comments about that?
No, except, well, the only thing I can comment about to that is this is what has gone on for so long. This is part of world history. And I also have to say that this government, this country has always supported that, like they supported apartheid. And these are the things that have to be changed. And people have to come to understand that we are all human beings. And therefore we all should be respected and cared for. And until that happens, these horrible things are going to continue to be all over. And it's not going to happen in my lifetime, I know that. People are slow to learn. But it has to happen. It has to, otherwise the world will be totally destroyed because you cannot have hate ruling, because hate is a horrible thing. And it's a very strong force, but love is the strongest force throughout the universe. And that's what people have to come to understand. And this has nothing to do with religion. It simply has to do with understanding what is real. That's the only comment I can
Are
make.
there any other comments or questions right now?
I just remembered the name of the movie. It's called The City of Joy.
Thank you, Paul.
On Netflix.
Thanks. Don? Don?
It seems that the reading that Malcolm did in prison changed his attitudes completely. I assume it had to do with he read about Muslim ways and beliefs. Do we know what he read specifically?
I don't know specifically what he read, but he read everything. I know he told me he read everything he could get his hands on to learn. And these are the things that helped him to understand things. But I don't know specifically what books he read. I don't know if he ever told anyone else, but this was not told to me.
And that right there is why so many books are banned, not just from prisons and jails, but even schools, etc. Because a little bit of knowledge goes a real long way.
Mhm.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yep, sure does. It certainly does. Oh.
Is there anyone else right now, or okay, we'll continue on. Our closing hymn is Ain't Gonna Let Nobody Turn Me Round by the Freedom Singers.
In 1962, in my hometown, we were engaged in a very intense struggle against racial segregation. And there were mass jailings. At one point, a federal judge issued an injunction with names on it of the people they thought were the leaders of the movement. Reverend Samuel Wells was in Shiloh Baptist Church that night, and he said, I'm not going to let no injunction turn me round. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me round, turn me round, turn me round. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me round. Wait, I know this is a show, but you have to actually sing this song. You can never tell when you might need it. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me round, turn me round, turn me round. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me round. I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, marching up the freedom land. Ain't gonna let no injunction turn me
You never know when you might need it. That's for sure. Our closing words, Selma?
Yes. Our closing words are from the Reverend Dr. Nathalie Fenimore, a Black UU religious educator. Shirley Chisholm was asked why she, a Black woman, was running for president. You don't have a chance. Why are you doing that? And she said, because I am in love with the America that does not yet exist. And that's how Unitarian Universalism is also. I'm in love with the Unitarian Universalism that does not yet exist. But I have to hold both the love for that thing and the love for the reality. It does not yet exist. It will probably not exist in my lifetime. I don't think it will in that of my children, but I can't deny my love for it. You know, wanting to be there in that struggle. That's why I'm fighting.
Thank you. Extinguishing the chalice. In the spirit of Malcolm X, a revolutionary optimist, and the words of Mariame Kabe, an organizer, educator, and curator, hope is a discipline, so you continue to push and learn in order to realize something better. We extinguish this flame, but keep the light of hope, the warmth of community, and the fire of commitment in our hearts until we are together again. When we are together, we circle our round sanctuary and join hands for our closing circle and covenant. For now, we will join hands in spirit as we recite our covenant together. Love is the spirit of this fellowship, and community is its goal. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. We now move to joys and concerns and community conversations.